And good morning, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday morning, Tech Tuesday for L&D Talk. My name is Brent Schlenker. I'll be your host today. I have two fabulous guests popped up into the windows. Mark Lassoff, hello. Thank you very much for hanging out today. Anthony Altieri, thank you for hanging out with me. And of course, all of the wonderful extra people hanging out in the chat room.
We now have recorded evidence that I'm wearing a different Packer shirt. Okay, so let's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Not a thing anymore. All right.
Yeah, it's almost a rule, Mark. So if you have a favorite football team, you have to at least once show up and wear your favorite football jersey.
Okay, I'm actually hoping that football gets eliminated due to court action. So.
Okay, so maybe it's not a rule. Hey, hold on a second. I totally forgot to do something.
L&D Talk. L&D Talk. With your host, Brent Schlenker.
There you go. And so, Mark, in the house is Sam Rogers. He's at Snap Synapse. He is the fabulous beatboxer that put that together for me. And he is my co-host on Fridays, Video Fridays. So, yay, good times. And Ajay Pangakar is in the house. He will be our co-host tomorrow for Business Wednesday. I don't even know what kind of title we came up for yet, but we talked the business of corporate training, learning, and development, and how we actually get all of this work done. And then, of course, Anthony, you are my co-host on Thursdays, which is Things Thursday. Yay. All right, cool. Today's topic on Tech Tuesday, what e-learning software features do you wish existed? And maybe we just kind of wish that none of the software existed. I don't know. Mark, tell me what you're thinking right off the top of your head when we're talking about e-learning software and features.
Well, the e-learning industry grew up differently than the software industry, and I came from software. So I look at, how software is developed and how much more can be done to create engagement in typical software, rich internet experiences on the web, etc. And that's because instead of taking a tool-based or software-based approach, they took a development-based approach. Obviously, it's a double-edged sword, because when you have a developer-based approach, then you need a higher skill level or higher technical skill level to develop learning. So, I think it's a double-edged sword, but I think software has been a great help and also kind of a hindrance in the industry, because whenever you have to develop something in software, you're limited by the capabilities and context of that software. And I think it's what's led to a lot of bad kind of PowerPoint-like e-learning. And if we had taken a different approach, maybe we'd be seeing some more exciting and more interactive types of learning production now. Yeah,
I completely agree with everything he just said. The tact I take on it is whenever I'll talk to somebody and say, well, Captivate can do this or Storyline, whatever. What I get back, well, will Captivate let me do something? Well, if you're asking your tool's permission, then the tool is the one making the decision, what your course is going to look like. And, and we talked about this last week, if you can go in, if you can have Captivate create that shell and then go in and edit and add to it and augment it, now you make it your own. Now you make it something that's great, something special, something that sticks out. And I think the backside of that, though, is I think this actually comes at a cost to us, because what I'm starting to get a sense, and I don't have paperwork to back this up, so I could just as easily make the claim that I'm the Princess of Canada, really. Is the people who can do that, as Mark said, L&D kind of evolved as this kind of weird stepchild of development and software and teaching that they somehow fell together. I think one of the things I'm starting to get a sense of is people who can do that extra step, who can go in and edit the code, edit the JavaScript, edit whatever. are starting to look outside of L&D for other positions. They're kind of starting to migrate away from the industry. And so what we're getting left with are the Captivate jockeys and the Storyline jockeys who, and like Mark said, you get a lot of stuff that looks very similar.
I think it's interesting that a lot of people, when they get into one of those authoring tools and they do an export, they don't even realize that what's actually being exported, like what is actually in that package. And I think we can kind of reflect back a few episodes ago, Anthony, when you were talking about being able to just get into that HTML code that you export out of those tools and to be able to change stuff instead of having to reopen that package inside the authoring tool, change one thing, re-export it. Having an understanding of what that final output is significantly helpful, can help you be a better developer, can help you be faster, can help you be more effective, all of those different things. So we identify with some, maybe we'll refer to these as shortcomings, if you will. But so then what's the flip side? What's the answer to that?
Learn the code.
How do we move to the next level, or what is the next level?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it?
Well, if we don't have a vision, we're never going to know how to get there. So what do we wish for? Let's start there.
When Mark Echo had his learning effort fully up and going, Mark Echo, the clothing designer, he had a learning effort, and his goal was to make learning as much fun as video games. Make it something that people wanted to do just because it was so engaging and that much fun. And I really think, that's kind of the gold standard, right? That's if the learning is so engaging and so good that people would do it as almost entertainment just because they want to. I think that's a good place to be headed.
So how do we relate that back to getting there? So if that's where we want to go, what does wishing that our development community knew HTML, how does that get us there? Or how does the software get us there? Or does the software actually get us there? Or is this sort of, does having that as sort of our end game, or at least one of many future games, does it kind of start to take away the need for the software if we're talking about just engaging media?
Well, let me clarify. I don't, it's kind of the same stance I have with Flash. I have nothing against the software. I have nothing against the Flash software. I have nothing against Captivate itself. My issue is with the reliance that this is all I can do is what these buttons let me do. That's, where I get the heartburn. So I think what we need to do is show in the community, and there are dozens of examples, not hundreds of examples out there already. This is what can be done by taking this product that you created in Captivate. Use Captivate, create the framework, create the graphics, create the images. Go ahead. It's easier. It's rapid development. It does what it needs to do. But then add to that, and there are examples out there of using tools like that, and showing the value of, now you don't look like everyone else. Now this is something that is much better and can interact with things in a lot of ways. And I will go back to something that I very rarely mention, but I think it's XAPI. I forget the name. I don't know. I've heard of it before.
Isn't that the same as tin can? What's that?
No, I seriously get my hand slapped violently whenever I call it that. I have to call it XAPI.
Sorry, I didn't mean to push us down that rabbit hole.
But here again, I'll pick on XAPI, but the same thing with Google Analytics. If you want to look at how your code is being used, you have to have some code sense. Not a lot. Google Analytics is arguably one line of code that you just copy and paste in the header and Bob's your uncle. You're done. But if you can't even do that, you're in trouble. And being able to get those analytics. How are people using the content? So now it's even below making that cool content. It's finding out if anybody's even bothering with your content. And having just the most basic coding skills can really just open. I mean, that is a garage door you can open wide.
Yeah, I agree with Anthony. I think, my feelings were for a long time, and again, coming from software and, basically being kind of a jerk, that, that we had built this industry around the lowest common denominator of developer, the least skilled, least time, lowest budget. And you still hear this discussion at conferences, can make it cheaper and easier, cheaper and easier, cheaper and easier, and it's been to, I think, the detriment of learners. And, when you can code, whether it's HTML or whatever, and using HTML as a starting point, you can do anything. You can create things that are as engaging as, the video games my niece and nephew were playing the other night. But, because we've insisted on this kind of lowest common denominator strategy where the guy who used to schedule the conference rooms when we did live training is now the developer, it had to be easy enough for a relatively unskilled person to do it. So, you know what? Now we're enjoying the result of that. And had we professionalized the development part of this field and didn't take the route of, anyone can make learning, I think we would have been better off at this point. And that doesn't mean that, professional web developers and professional developers don't use software and don't use tools and frameworks. They do, but they're much more flexible and allow you to do a lot more with them because they're code-based. And maybe if we had gone in that direction, more effort would have been put towards developing those frameworks. Maybe we'd have a framework for, 3D immersive learning experiences. Maybe we'd have a framework for, multiple levels of evaluation that was much deeper. But we don't. We've got, plugins for PowerPoint.
Yeah, true. But I think it all kind of starts with, it has to start, well, okay, let me just step it even further back. And maybe this will stretch into tomorrow's conversation, but it's got to start with some sort of market demand, right? What is the market demanding from us before somebody says, hey, there's an unmet need. Let's build some software to meet that need. You mentioned VR, and we talk virtual reality, alternate reality, 360-degree video, all of that new tech that's now becoming so popular. The one thing that I've been telling people is that it's, a lot of people are saying, oh, it's too early. Oh, it's, it's going to drop off. It's going to die. We already had this boom, 20 years ago. And now it's just another trend. And for me, and then there's the old, this is what I always say, we're a lagging indicator in our industry, right? For technology. So we're always the last ones to adopt it. And, in my mind, there's good reason for that. But like I said, that's another conversation.
I don't 100% agree with that. I think we adopt, on a whim, certain trends that make us feel technically competent, for all the talk on Twitter, I've yet to see an actual study that shows it's educationally effective. And at the beginning, I always asked for, where's the research on this that shows this works? And I'd be told, oh no, we have to try it. We have to try these tools and find application for them, which is an approach. I don't think we're hesitant to adopt technology. I mean, if you look at here we are on Blab, if you look at video and the adoption of internet video, which now is kind of increasing, I'm not sure that's it. I think we're hesitant to adopt complexity, not technology.
Expand on that. Help me out.
So when I started in eLearning getting serious, everyone was talking about how do we use Twitter for eLearning? And my response was, well, why don't we use a banana? For all we know, it's just as relevant. Technology that makes people feel like they're part of tech, that makes people feel like they're part of the larger tech scene, that's kind of got some cool trend behind it. So everyone was talking about Periscope, the last couple of comments. How do we use that? Well, Periscope is going to have your content next to 3 teenagers smoking marijuana and making racial remarks on camera. So, why is it relevant just because it's new technology and it seems exciting? I think, if we're going to be really a profession, the technology we use has to be vetted by actual study, by actual research, to make sure that it's not even injurious to the learner's experience. So I don't think, because you said, people are hesitant to adopt technology. We're the last to adopt technology. I don't know that that's true. I think sometimes we're too eager to adopt technology when it's not complex, but we stay away from the really deep learning that's behind the technologies, in order to, that really, I think, could advance the profession. And again, this comes from, again, having a different perspective, coming from the software industry, and like I said, being kind of a ne'er-do-well. So.
No, it's awesome. It's awesome. I appreciate that. Anthony, why don't you fill in on your side? So being of the same jerk clan that Mark hails from, proud, wear it proud. As soon as you said that, like, my head immediately went back to, was it 8 months ago almost, when there was a guild chat completely around how will you use the Apple Watch in your e-learning? And I just remember looking at that like, oh my God, what an incredibly silly topic to have, because you do have those people, and I admit, I like the bright and shiny things just as well as anybody else, and I will go and look at them, but you have to take a measured approach. You can't be, oh, this new tech came out, well, that has to be the answer to e-learning. And Mark brought up, how does Twitter solve your e-learning problems? Well, it doesn't, quite frankly. I mean, it might solve some of yours, absolutely, but it doesn't solve some of mine. So the fact that it's new tech does not by itself create an answer. You have to take a measured approach to it. You have to look at it and test it and see, what does this offer? Does this give me something that advances my goal, advances what I want to do? And if it does, then great, explore it. But if it doesn't, then set it aside and spend your time and money and efforts on the things that do. And I think here's where L&D, you've got kind of this two mindsets of, you've got the early adopters that want to rush in, and God love them, the people who want to go in and see how can we use the Apple Watch for e-learning. That's fine. If it helps you, that's great, do that. But then you've also got the old guard, this is how it's always been done crowd. And there's that contention in between. And you have to have that middle ground where you take that measured approach, you take that, the analytics, and show that it actually helps. That's how you bring those two sides together. And until then, you're going to have that friction.
So there's an interesting discussion I'm having kind of with AJ here in the live chat. I've always seen this, that we are the creators of the learning technology. We're not the consumers of it. I look at the people who are in this industry and I say, we are the people who are creating the learning. We're not the people who are consuming it. And I think that gives us a higher responsibility to innovate and to create learning that is effective, is transformational, and I think to innovate within the industry. And that requires understanding of technology beyond just the consumer end. We can't simply consume the programs that are status quo right now and be satisfied with that. As innovators in the industry, we have to look beyond what Captivate can do and what other software packages can do, and figure out, how do we advance that? Because we know, all of us know, that this is not the most effective way to deliver learning. I've never heard anyone say that Captivate is the most effective way to deliver learning.
Well,
or any of this. I'm speaking of Captivate in a general sense here.
Sure.
So, if we're not going to innovate in learning, if we're not going to be the ones who innovate and move this further down the road and do more and make it more engaging and more interesting and more effective, who's going to do that? Are we sitting around waiting for Adobe to come up with something new? Because that's really not in their best interest. Their best interest is to feed the current monster. We have to be the innovators.
Well, and also we have to be the drivers of that. Adobe is going to create a product that responds to our needs and demands. And if we're not enhancing that product, if we're just creating I hate when I have to go to like Kung Fu Panda 3 as the source of all wisdom. The line from Shifu is, if you never do anything more than you know, you will never be anything more than you are. If we don't push Captivate and create things beyond what Captivate can create, then there's no reason for Adobe to take Captivate and say, oh, well, we're going to add this feature, we're going to enhance that feature, whatever. We have to be the ones who drive that.
Yeah, I think this is a great conversation, by the way, and I'm glad that there is some tension maybe in some of it, but I see it. And I think the interesting thing is that I think on all sides, I think everybody is right in what they're expressing, and I think there's different levels of where we're at, right? So when I say I think we're a lagging indicator. What I mean is sort of on a mainstream basis, right? Mark's point, I do like us, like those of us that are passionate about the industry, love being in the industry, are excited about new technologies, love learning about how technologies can be applied to learning. We do enjoy jumping in early into new technologies, new conversations. And I don't think, maybe maybe it's semantics. I don't know, but I ask that question. Okay, how can we use this tool in learning? Not in the sense of how can we use it right now. When I ask that question of myself, and when I'm talking about new tools, and maybe I just need to be better about choosing my words. What I'm normally trying to express is, when or if a particular tool takes off, right, and becomes really mainstream, my thought is always, okay, how can we, now that there's people using it, right, and there's and we know that this is now a new channel that people are using to communicate or to consume content, how do we as developers of solutions engage in that and take advantage of it and leverage it and say, okay, this is something that's very cool. My audience, I've done my audience analysis. I know my audience uses this tool to a great degree. So how can I utilize that now to help push and deliver some sort of learning message that is pointed at some sort of objective down the road, whether that is the entire solution, which probably isn't the case, whether it's just a part of many different technologies. How does that come into play?
So I think Craig brings up a good point of, when you look at something and it doesn't strike you immediately obvious, this is good for learning, well, then maybe it isn't. But at the same time, we have to look at, we try to homogenize e-learning, I think, to a detriment, because we look at corporate learning versus, internal learning, compliance training, versus some of the training that Mark and I do, which is very public facing. We're offering training to people that we've never seen before, we will never see before. We have no oversight. We have no control over what their computers are. There's all these things. It's all in different environments. And immediately, I think of the beacon discussion we had the other day. In some cases, beacons work really well for e-learning and work well for driving training, but in other cases, no, it would be silly to try and shoehorn this in.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think what's complicated for us as professionals, and maybe not complicated, maybe it's just new, right? I tried to write this in a blog post, I think last week, and I'm trying to figure out a better way to express this, but I think the times have changed so significantly. The tools we have available to us are so much more extreme, and there's so many of them. Our toolbox, our choices that we have to select from to create solutions is so broad, so vast, that we've never really had this sort of experience before. We've never had users, and I mean like 15, 20 years ago, right? I mean, when methodologies and models like instructional design and all of the different theories and concepts that we used to do to create that classroom training, a lot of what we did over the last 10, 15, 20 years was try to adapt that into this new world of tech, when instead of looking at it and going, wow, we need to totally come up with this is such a new paradigm. It's so different. We're not used to having users or learners that have access to so much technology, so much knowledge, and so many other things. How do we now adapt to deliver an experience that supports that or leverages that or combines with it to make different, better solutions?
You know, Brent, I think you unintentionally there underlined my point, though. The revolution in access to educational content, if you look at things like Udemy and Udacity and all of these things that are coming up, didn't come from a set of tools that learning developers use.
Exactly.
They all came from a software development type of approach that created a new universe.
Yes.
You know, I mean, we have reached. I'm sorry, Anthony?
It came from a lack of tools.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, you know, we reach hundreds of thousands of learners on Udemy. And again, that wasn't created in Captivate. That was created completely outside the realm of learning and development. And if you look again at like the big revolutions that have occurred in online learning, you know, all of them have come from an unexpected place. They haven't come from our current tool set. And that's essentially my point, is that, you know, we so badly need to innovate, and it's not happening from within the tools. So we need to look outside that to really provide these innovations. And also, you're right, we absolutely need to adjust to the current content of an incredible availability of information and formal learning content that's out there, that when we do a course on HTML5, we're competing with everything from, you know, the 13-year-old Romanian kid with a cold who's made his own videos on YouTube to other formal courses. So, I mean, it's a very, very different landscape, and people need to understand that.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think when we have these conversations, I always end up realizing, you know, we're all on the same page. We're just looking at it and coming at it from different perspectives, because you're right. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. It's like within our industry, we're never the ones that create the Udemys and the, any other new tool out there. You're right. It's always some other enterprising entrepreneurial spirit that has realized, wow, I know how to code. I like the internet. I like to learn. I'll bet others like to learn. Maybe we should create some sort of software that allows everybody to learn together. Then they just go, oh, okay. And they just go build something really cool, you know, and then we're left thinking we're the industry, we know better, you know, and yet you're right. We're not the ones. Our sort of insulated industry in a vacuum is never really the ones that creates the solutions that we need. We wait until other stuff is created, and then we figure out how best to utilize it to meet the needs of either the business that we're in or the products we're trying to sell, or, you know, any of those instances. And I wonder if, this might be an interesting question. Do we need to be innovating more from within, or is it okay for us to just wait for others to create stuff and then have us kind of jump on the bandwagon?
Years ago, I wrote a piece that turned out to be controversial for learning solutions, that this industry needs rock stars. We need our own, you know, who is our Sal Khan? Who is our, who is our rock star? Who's going to stand up and be the person who pushes? And, you know, it's not going to be me. So the position is still open, but I think, you know, we have our rock stars in this industry, but frankly, we suffer from a huge paternity problem.
Yeah.
The rock stars were the same rock stars we had 30 years ago, and most of them are saying the same things as 30 years ago. Yeah. And that's fine. but it's time to pass the baton on. I'm 42. We need to look at the people who are younger than me, who are coming into the industry now, who have a vision that goes beyond the status quo. And they're the ones who are going to carry us further. But we absolutely need our own rock stars to innovate from within. And it's completely possible.
Yeah. And by the way, let me just go ahead and throw this out there. If anybody knows any of those people or sees people that potentially are coming up through sort of the ranks, maybe recent college graduates, or you know somebody that it could be that person, let me know. I would love to talk to them and help get them to that level so that we have those people, coming and engaging. And to your point earlier, Mark, not leaving, right? If we've got people that are coming into our industry that are super knowledgeable, super tech savvy, and then all of a sudden they realize nobody in this industry really gives a crap about what I'm doing, and they boogie off to some other industry because it's more lucrative or they get more respect. Well, that's our fault as an industry. So I'd like to help there.
That's, so two things. One, Mark said something controversial. No, surely you jest. Silly thought, of course. But I mean, he is, again, 100% right. You go to these conferences and it's this, Mark, I still remember this conversation Mark and I had, I don't know, maybe a year ago. And I'm actually very mad at him now that we've had this conversation, because now it afflicts me. We'll go to conferences and see people that I know that person. I have no idea who it is. I've never met him, never talked to him, but I always see them at the conference. I know this person from the conferences.
Yeah.
And you start to get this way of, and now, now I'm more aware of it now. But you see so many of the same faces at the conferences, and we're seeing the same thing we've been saying for years. And we really do need, maybe not it's a rock star, maybe it's a whole band. Brent and the Blabbers. I know the rock.
We're still working on that, Anthony. It's all right.
But the band bread. I don't know. But we do need someone who can stand up and say, and kind of show this is what's possible. I think part of the problem, though, is, and you alluded to this too, is how many people graduate from college, walk out of their university, sheepskin in hand, and say, I'm going to go be an instructional designer, or I'm going to go create courseware. Almost everyone I've talked to, with very few exceptions, they were actually college professors, or they were classroom, or they wrote textbooks, or they were programmers and web designers, and we kind of migrated together. Nobody comes into this industry, we stumble into it. And I think that's, I think that's kind of a thing too, is as long as that's the case, we're going to have trouble finding those rock stars to guide, to take us to that next level. We're not going to have that Elvis, because nobody wants to be here. We find ourselves here, and we enjoy, and then we find out we enjoy it. We have to find that person, that beacon that says, "No, come on in. The water's fine."
So here's something that's really interesting, so you kind of bring in what we were talking about yesterday, right? Yesterday's conversation was, why do we like this? Why do we enjoy being in this industry? Why do we do what we do? And what came out of it was that everybody, you're right, stumbles into this career and what it is that we're doing. And so I'm not really too sure if that's a bad thing or if it's a good thing. It's just sort of a reality that we exist in. And to Sam's point, mentioning Tim Ferriss is an interesting direction to take this in, because I'm a huge fan. I'll admit if I had a man crush on anybody, it's the awesomeness of what Tim Ferriss pulls together. And if anybody is a student of learning, he is, but he's not in our industry. And he has made his whole entire career out of learning. And it's not marketed that way. It's not talked about that way. But what drives him to do what he does is this insatiable desire to know. And he crafts his own experiments to discover solutions. And so when we talk in our industry about, wow, we need to create more environments where people can discover on their own, or, learn on their own, or, all of this kind of stuff, constructive, what is it? Constructivist theories of learning and all that kind of stuff. Tim's kind of created and defined his own space, right?
I figured that out. I think, Brent, I think part of it is, we're about the process, and, the marketing should be about the results and the gain. People have a gain from learning, and that's what Tim Ferriss skips to. He doesn't talk about the process. He talks about the gain, right. The behavior change that manifests itself based on successful training has gains associated with it. But we're always caught up in the process to get people there. And people don't want to be trained. People don't want to take a class. They want to be a successful web developer. They want to obtain a job as a pilot, or whatever the goal is. And, that's marketing. But we haven't caught on to that. We'll go on and on about bullet points, about the lessons and features in our courses. And AJ is right. People do want a bit of a shortcut. But Tim Ferriss, whether you like him or hate him, you certainly have to acknowledge that he markets the gain that people will get from the various life hacks that he treats. And I think that's the larger lesson to be learned from him and others, that, we need to be talking about what do people gain from this and be less caught up in the process that gets them there.
Well, or how do we look at what he does, right? And maybe it's become just so automatic to him. That's why he doesn't really care too much about it. But how can we look at what he does, right, and the process that he goes through, and figure out how we can utilize something similar in our corporate training spaces? So, for example, he interviews people that he really, really respects and wants to learn something from, right? And I'm a big proponent of, why don't we do that within our corporate spaces? Every corporation has subject matter experts that, for all intents and purposes, within that niche, within that company, within that business, is the rock star. Why isn't it something that we would be interested in to go meet them, interview them per se? Because we interview them anyways, right? When we're doing our audience analysis and our content analysis, we're going to these subject matter experts and we're squeezing their head for a ton of information anyways. Why don't we utilize the technology and expose that part of the process, and in order to utilize it to help people create a learning process and not just a learning product?
So I think you have more faith in the process than I do, because I think a lot of times we're not going to the subject matter expert. We're getting emails from the subject matter expert. Hey, you need a video that shows this, and you need text that says this, and that's it. We're not really doing that interview. We're not having that sit down with this person or persons to say, all right, what do we need? All right, let's go do that. Here's the storyboards, or here's, the prototype. All right, what am I missing? What should be better? What, whatever. But even when we do that, then we get back to what Mark had said earlier. We are not the consumers of our own product. So
right.
Now,
I hate to take people's e-learning.
Now you've got the two worst people in the world to review this product, reviewing this product. You've got the person who is the expert in telling you information, and you've got the person who is the expert, who's already the expert in the information that I'm expert in telling you. How do we, what we create then is invariably ends up being something created for us, not the consumer. So, even when, so like I said, first, I think you have much more faith in the process than I do, but even when it does, there's so many ways that can go wrong unintentionally, I don't think these people are saying, "Oh, well, screw the user." I think it just happens.
Right. Well, I mean, is it, and as I struggle for words, I look at my clock and realize we're 3 minutes away from 9 o'clock. So I will hold that thought till next time, because we need to wrap this sucker up, because everybody that's got 9 o'clock meetings is probably going to be dropping off. I know, Craig, I know, I try really hard not to run over, but this will be, we're probably going to run over, but I want to close out properly, because one thing I did not properly do was introduce Mark Lassoff and give him an opportunity to tell all of you who he is. I know you all do, but for those of you that are watching this recorded later, Mark, tell us who you are.
Oh, I'm just an enormously cute guy involved in e-learning. I have been involved in e-learning for about 10 years, ever since I started creating technical courses online. I have a company now called Learn to Program Media. We've had somewhere north of 850,000 learners learn some type of software development from us, web, mobile, or game development. And I have kind of been a proponent of improving what we've called e-learning for many, many years. So I'm kind of, an industry curmudgeon who's looking for some new ways to create learning that I think is going to really impress this generation. Because I look at, the video games and the media that kids consume, and we are just not competing with that. So my hope is to help drive us in a direction where learning competes with, Snapchat for eyeballs.
Indeed. And so people can find you. So at M Lassoff is your Twitter handle.
Yep, you can do that, and you can see what I'm having for lunch on Twitter. And Snap Synapse just pointed out, yeah, I'm part of the closing keynote panel for Focus On in Austin in June.
Right. Yep.
So if you like these ideas, you'll hear more about it then. And if you don't, and you come, you'll still hear more about it, but you just won't enjoy it as much.
Perfect. And Anthony, come on, we know where to find you, but anything new that you want to add?
So as Ajay has linked numerous times in the chat, I am doing the Beacon workshop at Focus on Learning. So whereas you can end the auspicious occasion with Mark, you can start it with me.
Absolutely. Take the workshop before the event with Anthony, and then close out the experience with the panel with Mark Lassoff. That is the deal of the day.
How do you have a better week than bookending it with these two mugs?
There you go. It just happened to work out that way today, to have you both here at the same time, which was fantastic. So, all right, so perfect. And again, those of you watching, my name is Brent Schlenker. I'm the Chief Learning Officer for litmus.com. You can read my blog posts at litmus.com/blog. You can follow me on Twitter at bschlenker. You can follow Litmus at Litmus. And you can also come hang out with the entire awesome Litmus team and everybody else learning about learning at C3. It's the Calidus Cloud Connections Conference in May in Vegas at the beautiful Wynn Resort. So if you're interested in that, you can hit up litmus.com/C3 to get registered and hooked up there. And then we're going to be at ATD. I believe everybody's going to be at ATD a couple weeks after that. Mark, you're not going to go?
No, I don't do too many. I only do tech knowledge for the ATD events.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yep. Good one too. But we will be there. And I think a handful of the rest of us here will be there as well. So not exactly too sure during these event weeks how I'm going to be doing the blabs. I'll either be taking a few days off and not doing these, or I will try to figure out some way to produce them and do them live from the event. Not too sure yet, but more on that later. But anyways, so we're here every morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time. Every day is a different day. It's a roll of the dice as to who's going to be hanging out here, except for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday now, where I do have totally committed co-hosts that would never leave me in a million years. Ajay Pengakar on Wednesdays, Anthony Altieri on Thursdays, and Sam Rogers, my co-host for Video Fridays. So everybody have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow. Adios.
Later.